Islam is monotheism. Do not commit idolatry. Do not be influenced by the plebeian mysticism. Universe is the real truth, but the knowledge of the real truth is not embraced in the perfection of thought, for it only yields in technology and its perfection. As for the real truth, can be penetrated not by humans' intelligence and even by the most sophisticated technological intelligence. The real truth is not tangled by anything and need not to be analogized. It should only be believed. The nature of the universe can be detected from the analysis of the compound of universal elements and the process of chemical reaction of the universe is an open science to be researched and studied. The essence of the real truth is like a rainfall that comes along with thunder. Can it be impeded? When the real truth is opened by God and becomes transparent, thus it is God's response, which is universe-wide, and it is the ultimate stipulation of God for human. For it is the pouring down of sciences from Him. The real truth is an absolute right of God, so do not act as the most knowledgeable to tell the beginning of universe, and do not even worship your ancestors, for you wish to look for a shortcut of blessing. In each category, both factions are like a beginner, but have not yet understood the real truth of God, which is the most vast. Do not recklessly look for any fact to deify an idol, so idolization could become a theology which can be lessened not anymore, and so humans fool themselves. There is an idol of science and an idolization upon something or ancestor when you are not careful with yourself while facing the real truth of divinity, which is full of mysteries. Therefore, do not play around with spurious mystic. Do not play around with the real truth, mystic, and someone else's logic in order to gain wealth easily. You should beware, for it is metaphysical crimes of cross spirit and nature. The risk is severely heavy, for the consequence is the changing nature with devils. The real truth actually is not a problem, nor a treasure of macrocosmic knowledge, which the way of its penetration should intentionally be made. Do not use God's secret as an object of exploration of the universal knowledge to overcome the universal anomaly. The issue of universe can be handled not by human. Can the ocean be deepened to prevent flood tide? Or can the moon replace the function of the sun, so that global warming will not be prolonged? Thus, do not render God's secret as the target to gain the highest knowledge. But sometimes God raises up an object which is intentionally brought forth for the improvement of human science, and be grateful for it, but surpass not the limits of the omnipotence of God. If you wish to deepen your knowledge related to microcosmic, it is proper to be seriously studied, considering the medication of the abundance of diseases has not been found. Therefore, understanding the malignant of virus and bacteria today is very important. But why do human beings precisely explore it to be used as the object of invention of mass annihilation weapon? The doomsday process is full of natural anomalies. There is no power that can stop the doomsday process. That is the real truth of God the Almighty. Do not render it as a mystery to look for its end. How is it possible? Thus do not also render it as a severely frightening and dreadful condition. Since God now is descending down His revelation once more, thus follow His directions and mandates, for the devastating process of doomsday can be lessened not, and the deterioration can be postponed not. So just admit humankind's mistakes unto God, and just acknowledge the omnipotence of God the most caring, and accept well His help. And limit all the greediness in utilizing the worst condition of this earth in order to conquer each other and strengthen their own army. Thus humankind should only believe on the omnipotence and the most creator of God, and nothing else. And if it is still considered as dilemmatic, thus I say, do not sleep and close your eyes even a moment. Could man do such thing when in reality no man can stand not to sleep and close his eyes? So I say, that is also the objectivity of a tiny fraction of the real truth, and it is only an element of the real truth on human body. And it is the real truth that God gives, which could only be felt and thought. However, humans' technology and intelligence cannot duplicate or replace it. Do not use the real truth as the target to challenge Sunnatullah or the way of Allah dealing with His creation, or the law of nature, or make them as a dilemma, so it becomes a science problem and is uploaded to be the butt of research. No matter how complex the universal problems are, there is nothing that is uncommon, whereas for God, it is only the same subject over and over again. And surely God has owned an instrument to control it. And the system of nature is as real as the absoluteness. And it cannot be disturbed by the understanding of casualism. None is coincident in the system of the true universe. All are in the embracement of the awareness of the system of universe that is systemic. There is always a reason that causes a consequence. The transparency of explanation about the shifting of magnetic pole, which has caused the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines MH370, is not a usual casualty, but rather a sign of doomsday. That is the indication that black hole has searched for its victim on this earth. That is the feasible explanation of magnetic poles shifting of this earth. Should it would be seen as the real truth that reacts in responding to a huge anomaly on this earth. And that is also the impact of human behavior. The real truth of God is intrinsic in the system of universe. God's real truth will not be lessened even by the most gigantic and devastating explosion in the universe. If humans like to explode their nuclear bombs, thus prohibit yourselves from exploring the universe to divert the sophisticated technology that has been gained. Whereas universe is immensely vast and it is enormously full of mysteries. Moreover, what is the purpose to develop technology to explore the universe? Whilst the earth where you dwell is intentionally destroyed? And what is the use of all the achievements if at the end it will be destroyed by the process of doomsday, and all of you can go not anywhere? Is there any science that can overcome the doomsday process? And is there any other place that can replace this earth? Whilst this subject is unreachable by you, thus as much as possible cease the war and bombing. Preserve the sustainability of your remaining earth. Be in peace and listen whereunto God's words, and implement His mandates, so all nations and countries will be secured to carry out the development of the most sophisticated technological invention, which can be used to weigh the outer space, to bring their inhabitants to move to other earths. And it is better for you all. And do not defy us, for through us, God's directions can be descended down to the world of human, and only through us, the war to defeat the devil's power can be guaranteed. Do not say that it is an old statement, for the one who taught you to create nuclear are the devils, in order to make your earth reaching its doomsday. Then they soon will be released from their curse. Whilst we come to inform you, so you will not be dominated by the devils, and hence you can be saved. If you are aware that the devils have conquered this earth, and you have known that human beings have no power to defeat devils, and if you have understood the way of thought of the universe, that it is the treasure of God's nature of thought, thus what is the use of thinking up something that is unreachable to human's mind? Therefore, do not ever ignore God's directions that we convey. Be focused on the knowledge that God is descending down. Belief in God can also make people become intelligent, for faith brings blessing, intelligence and science breakthrough. Who like to dispute which one precedes the other? an egg or a chicken. If there is an angel or genie cursed to be a chicken or an egg, surely it is cursed to be a chicken first, not an egg. If an egg is trampled, then what it would become? But chicken can lay eggs again. So is the universe. Which one comes first, black hole or sun? Certainly the sun comes first. So there is a sustainability of universe. Then black hole brings out the doomsday. Even if it happens only when needed. The dynamic of universe can be analogized with what comes first, egg or chicken. For if black hole is created first, the babies of universe will no longer exist since they will be devoured by the black hole. Human beings on this earth just recently mingle closely with the devils and become the victims of them after the earth is possessing the doomsday. It is the sign that God always puts forward the good and beneficial. Thus do not just speak black or white, for heaven likes the pure white. Creation of a creature has to be preceded by the existence of the spirit. Not only that, there should be a cause of curse. Thus, there is a mystic. Then punishment is given, which brings a curse and later on a creation. Be understood that it is the postulate of the most creation of God. God, the Supreme Spirit, firstly creates a spirit for His creation, and it is adjusted to the function and condition of a universal object in the space order of universe, and from the preparation of a spirit on one creation. Supposedly, it can be understood as the origin of His entire creations. Is there any God's creature that can make a spirit? That is God's power upon a real truth. Release your finger from your hand and give it to me. Can your finger move? If you feel the pain due to the wound, for you accidentally cut your finger, and you cannot move your cut off finger after it is separated from your hand, that is the sign that your finger is no longer connected to your spirit. Who gives the spirit into yourselves? Only for that, all people should acknowledge the omnipotence of God. And only for that, do not ever look for how God creates this universe and how is the beginning of this universe. There is none amongst us, the angels, who ever asks how God created the beginning of this universe. And we dare not to gaze how God creates us, His angels. Are we angels since the ancient time? And are we only a wind in the universe? But why can our spirits see everything and take care of every God's errand? Did we ever become humans or stones or anything? I have told you the knowledge about regulation of spirit. If you wish to be an angel, be an absolute holy person. If you wish to be a moon, be an angel with full of achievement first and save the universe. If you wish to be a snake, do as many as possible genius or the most disgusting transgression. Then this graceful nature will soon haunt your spirit. Verily, my explanation is a standardized methodology of universe and the hereafter. It is not a plebeian mysticism that tarnish the tawheed of God's teaching. And my explanation is not only a pleasantry, for I am tedious to see and hear the spells that idolaters cite when they ask for blessings to the trees or cemeteries, all the seas. Moreover, angels like not the puff of incense smoke. It is a plebeian smell. My mystical explanation, its implementation is done through the breakthrough of universal science, or modern mysticism that is not superstitious, but which can be articulated in accordance with the real truth of God's invisibility. And it is applied as enlightenment which fills the logic. Thus everybody would like to know what logical reason that is traced by terrorists. Thus they are capable to do bombings and suicidal bombings. Spontaneously, God could be considered to like bloodshed, and it is totally illogical. The logic of faith is surely through peace, compassion, serenity, and love amongst human beings. The essence of belief may need to be taught once more, so human beings will to turn away from conflicts and wars. For God, it is fine to explain the mystery of His essence through technology that is being infatuated by modern man. And it is acceptable that He shows Himself completely through the salvation by His heaven. God is certainly not completely invisible, for His shape has been declared by Himself as the embracement of the globality of all universes. Universe has no end. What happened is the apocalypse of the black hole, which then brings back the beginning of the universal objects, the embracement of the universal globality. That is God of the universe, Allahu Akbar. He is the most great. He is the Almighty and most knowing, and He is the most caring and most salvaging. The empiricism that embraces the mystery of divinity that is shown through the UFO phenomenon, which is real, and the discovery of the theory of universe by physicists. The explanations become clear when God stabilizes man's way of thinking in line with the incredible technological improvement. And the empiricism, which is stated through the reasoning of the Big Bang Theory, I can declare it as God's way to convey His explanation about the role of black hole, which at the end it comes to the disappearance of Malaysian Airlines MH370. None will expect about the presence of that God's explanation. but we mention it as a trumped card to make all people in the world realize, so they are willing to turn and heed the most recent God's revelations, and modern world is turning to it. Although God's previous revelations are regarded as old-fashioned, but the recent ones are multimodern. At certain chances, we find that the previous God's holy verses are interpreted shallowly and snaky, adjusted with the political gambling. How come a holy verse is interpreted in such a way? Surely the reason God's revelations, which are very modern, will soon eliminate the shallowness of religious interpretation. Therefore, do not carelessly follow illogical rejections which are impeding or misleading. My challenge is how to make Muslims willing to be aware that Islam adherence, shallowness of religious viewpoint is now no longer important and critical, for religion has been abrogated. But possessing religious criticality should use the tactic of playing marbles. Marbles that collide with each other will not break, and if the marbles roll to touch the other marbles, they are cheered. But it is marble, which is not breakable and always rolling. Religious adherents who are fanatic and radical should not also be crushed if they collide with other religious adherents. And if they touch each other, then shake hands, then all people are relieved and cheer joyfully. Do not be like Al-Qaeda or Taliban or Shia and Sunni that are divided. Now emerges a new radical group, the Islamic State, which drawn people's attention, for they are growled by many people, since their leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, declares Islam Caliphate in the area that he has conquered. Whereas Islam Caliphate is impossible to rise, even though they use ferocious way. The ferociousness of the Islamic State is not the same as Al-Qaeda and Taliban. This new group of Islam radical possesses the illusion of terrorism renewal, which is the most radical, and blindly wishes to establish Islam Caliphate. Thus all nations are alert upon infiltration of the Islamic State in their respective countries, including Muslim countries. For terrorism becomes more savage with the existence of the Islamic States, like a blaze poured by gasoline, and it positions the Islamic State to be the enemy of all nations. Thus, naturally, the Islamic State will not reign totally as a country. As a matter of fact, the impact of the existence of the Islamic States will end Islam in this world. Thus, I explain it will not be possible that a great leader of Islam arises in this century. Regarding the arise of the Islamic State that declares they have left the predicate of Syria and Iraq and use only the name of Islamic State, hoping that Islam adherents in the world give them appreciation upon the struggle of this Islamic State for Islamic nations throughout the world. This error should be heeded as a threat upon the surrounding Islamic countries, and even a threat upon all countries in this world. For the goal of the Islamic State is to unite Islamic countries in fighting for the rise of Islam in this world under the leadership of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, and for the sake of defeating the enemy of Islam, that is the Western Bloc. Thus, the Islamic State becomes the threat of all countries in this world. Thereof, we convey that since the enactment of God's fatwa of the obligation of Islam religion, there is no chance to establish the rise and victory of Islam in this world. Thus, we convey that the struggle of the Islamic State under the leadership of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi has no chance to reach what they have expected. In other area, there is an extremist Boko Haram that appears as ferocious. Thus Islam even terrifies the world more. Do not be like that. In my opinion, there is no one who feels not miserable upon Islam adherents' behaviors nowadays. Fragmentation of religions and unification of religions can be described as an image of the symbol of Taoism ideology, which are the ball of yin and yang, that is, the two opposite principles in nature. Although it is not exactly the same, but religious life also rolls like a ball. And the sketch of yin and yang color is black and white, representing the life of religions, which some are black and some others are white, when the ethos of religion is rolling into the darkness. And if you will to make a small turn, you can find the white. Thus we offer a standardized modern spirituality from God, which is purely white, without a threat nor allies, without wars nor calumnies. Verily, it is impossible for anyone who will reject this God's stipulation, for they will be drowned and not included in the meticulous current of heaven's salvation. And in fact, the joy to find God brings elation for the scientist by completing the theories of the universe without obstruction. Modernity is impossible to be gained from the Islamic State people or terrorists and the like, for they always glorify the past times, which has almost been extinct. If one wishes to revive the glory of the past, thus it will be left behind and defeated by the modernity of the most recent God's revelation. All subjects will be elucidated by God through stating empiricism in the nuance of apocalyptic and the language of modern technology. Let everybody seize the modern side of God, the most intelligent. Therefore, it is impossible that we can be defeated and set aside anymore, for we have to exist and work and be responsible completely unto God. Thus the movement of the new era will develop fast. It is in line with the typology of saturation upon violence in the name of religion. Many people wish to search spiritual renewal due to disappointing religious experience, which they share from various backgrounds, but they are thirsty of logical enlightenment and wish to shun away from the rigid and short-sighted doctrine. They need freedom of spiritual insight, which prohibit not to surpass religious borders. Therefore, modern spiritualism does not necessarily avoid other focus point. That is religion, which the purity of its essence of truth is acknowledged and justified. It is only the society of modern spirituality that does not practice complicated rituals of worship, which are boring and luxurious, and sometimes bring financial burden, and need sacrifice of sincerity to conduct heavy and crowded rituals. Each day, religious ritual is added more with new trinket rituals, which seem intentionally are made to be complicated and aggravated in order to state that they are from a different sect and more focused. And by such acknowledgement, their prayers will certainly be answered, as if God will surely like the more complicated rituals and need more sacrifice, whilst God only values holiness and sincerity in worshiping. What is certainly felt as heavy of worshipping in modern spirituality that God guides nowadays is the formation of new characteristic, which is holy, through self-subjugation from the tendency to make sin intentionally or unintentionally. And what is more difficult is to improve the quality of holiness, for many preferred desires should be left behind, since dominant desires have not always in line with God's sanctification. When public is willing to apply egalitarianism completely, thus most of the impediment of sanctification can be eliminated or weakened. For fully humbleness can ease the unnecessary ego, and trials of patience and steadfastness become more unstiffened. The case is different for people who are greedy and avaricious, as well as arrogant and aware not of their position. Sanctification upon such type of people will be tough and usually going through a wearisome that is painful, and they commonly experience humiliation from God. Indeed, the sins taste sweeter and pleasant. It is difficult to leave everything that is favored but forbidden. People feel better to increase rituals of worshipping which have no purpose, just to make their prayers be granted, than living whatever they desire, whereas they are aware that it is merely a sin. Such as humans who like to corrupt and have a love affair rather than sanctify themselves perfectly. They in trance tend to do useless worship ritual, but they think it could compensate their transgression, and they are flocking to visit the graves. truly many people are misled in understanding the real truth of God, whom obviously teaches not to pray at cemeteries and sacred places. Thus God threatens, do not ever go together, visit cemeteries again. For in that places exist only devils that enliven the visit. And the spirits that are idolized at their graves are cursed by God. They will not be resurrected as a noble human being. And they also will not to be involved in the sin of idolization upon their graves. And God states to them who like to visit cemeteries, if they hit more the graves than their worship unto God, and He shall let their prayers at the cemetery become their failures, and not a blessing. And be certain of that, as the right of God to answer upon every exaggerated perversion in worshipping. People whose graves are considered as sacred will not be noble. And any prayer that is done in cemetery will not be answered. Thus we have conveyed God's response upon the fondness to visit and pray at the cemetery. Modern spirituality nowadays avoids any idolization and abstruse and illogical worship. The worship of modern spirituality nowadays does not need any special event to be dedicated toward God. Therefore, it will save money. God is the most rich, and it is truly inappropriate to give food of offerings unto God, for He eats and drinks not. What God needs is obedience and purity of His servants.